Hey everyone, welcome to another edition of Monday Night Football, Week 8 in the NFL, the Bucs versus the Giants. We're just going to give a quick breakdown since it is those Monday night games. Most of you guys, again, have already got most of your teams, if not all your teams, players wrapped up and already done playing. But just in case you have a couple different people that are playing tonight, whether you're in a deeper league and you had Devonta Freeman and now he's out, or maybe you had Chris Godwin and you need a last minute pickup or something like that. We're just going to give you kind of a breakdown of who to go with. First and foremost, like I said, if you were relying on Devonta Freeman, definitely, I would go for Wayne Gallman Jr. He's been the one to step up whenever there's a running back that's needed. Tampa Bay is a really good run defense, so I hope you aren't relying on a Giants running back not named Saquon Barkley in general. But some people are desperate. These are desperate times. Running backs are falling left and right. So I wouldn't blame you. Also, like I said, if you have Godwin, he's obviously not going to be playing this week. So maybe someone like Scotty Miller, if he's available, would definitely be a viable option. Just the matchup is pretty simple. It's pretty straightforward. I'm not telling you guys anything that you don't know. If you subscribe, if you listen to anything regarding fantasy, let alone our podcast, you should already know this is going to be a pretty one-sided affair as far as fantasy relevance goes. Daniel Jones, will he fall out of his shoes again tonight? We don't know. Will he continue his streak of being the Giants' leading passer and rusher, the Lamar Jackson in New York, the New York version of Lamar Jackson? But most importantly, with these running back issues that the Giants have had, Darius Slayton, when available, is a very good viable option, as well as Sterling Shepard. Evan Ingram, I still haven't given up hope on him. The more wide receivers are struggling or out, the better it is for Evan Ingram. He has been solid, and when I say solid, not to last year's extent, but he's been one to get you double digits more often than not so far this season. So since George Kittle, if you aren't aware, he hurt himself this weekend, Evan Ingram is probably still out there on a lot of y'all's waivers just because he hasn't been the Evan Ingram that was last year. So people probably got frustrated and dropped him. So he's probably somebody that would be a nice pickup. But we're going to preview the game real quick just to get that out of the way. Most importantly, though, we're going to set you guys up. Since I personally won't be here for Thursdays and Sundays and maybe next Monday's game, I want to go ahead and give you the most updates that I have as far as the injury reports around the league, as far as big name players that are coming back in a week or two, and some players that are that got injured this week, and who is not going to be available for next week. Just to kind of take some relief off of Drew, so he's not doing everything all by himself, and just to kind of get you guys set up early. So when you wake up tomorrow, usually waivers clear on Tuesday and everyone's fair game. You can, if you're like me, wake up at 12:01 a.m. and start getting those waivers placed and start building your team back up. So anyway, Drew, you want to take away with just the quick breakdown of the game to basically what they already know is going to happen.
All right. Yeah. It's kind of a who cares game really, but because we all know Brady's gonna do what Brady does. But last week Brady had 369 yards, 4 touchdowns, a 127 passer rating. For the year, he has 18 touchdowns, 4 interceptions, and a 102 passer rating. His relationship with Gronkowski is starting to heat back up. He had 5 catches on 8 targets, 62 yards, and a touchdown last week.
And if you guys remember from our Sunday show, Gronk was on my top 5 matchups this week, tight ends versus either linebackers and safety. So that seems to be ringing true the closer we get to game time. So anyway.
And Brady has a lot of options in that offense, and especially in the passing game. It's what makes him so dangerous for me anyways. I really don't believe it's going to change a whole lot this week because the Giants have the number 1 rushing defense in the league. So they look for them to come out a little pass heavy. I guess the Giants defense that's allowing a 100 passer rating for the year, which is 22nd in the league and around a 70% completion percentage on the year. So I look for them to stick with that pass heavy game plan until maybe they get up a couple scores, maybe 2 or 3 scores. Then I think that's where Ronald Jones and Leonard Fournette really come into play. On the year, Ronald Jones has he averages 4.6 yards a carry. He has 4 touchdowns with 506 yards. Fournette actually averages more than he does. He doesn't have as many carries as him. Of course, he missed a game or 2. So he actually averages 4.9 yards a carry. He has 173 yards and 2 touchdowns. But again, like I said earlier, Brady has a lot of options in this game, and both of those guys have been there for him more than I actually thought when I was reading the stats. Ronald Jones has 18 catches, 86 yards on the year. Fournette actually has 13 catches and 81 yards, not far behind, with 15 targets. Ronald Jones has 27 targets. So just a couple more options in the backfield for him to throw to on those check down plays or something quick, screen plays. But on the flip side, Tampa's defense, like I said, Giants defense allows, they're pretty bad against the pass. And on the flip side, Tampa's pass defense is really good. They're actually ranked 6th in the league, giving up an 84.3 passer rating and 225 yards a game. Tampa's pass rush is a big part of their success defending the pass. On the year, they have 25 sacks and 88 pressures. The 25 sacks ranks 2nd in the league. So the more pressure they're putting on the quarterback, the easier it makes it for the secondary. So, and that does create a problem for Daniel Jones, who has been sacked 20 times this year. That's tied for 25th in the league. And all that pressure on Daniel Jones has reflected his passing numbers. He only has 5 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, and a 73.7 passer rating, and averaging around 200 yards a game passing. But Daniel Jones is the leader, as I believe you said earlier. He averages 42.3 yards per game and 9.5 yards per carry. That 42 yards per game is good for a quarterback, not good for a team leading rusher, so to speak. But the Giants, they could probably forget about the run tonight too. Tampa Bay is the number 1 rushing defense in the league, only 3 yards per carry and 66 yards per game. So
yeah, but it's Daniel Jones, this generation's Michael Vick, so that might change tonight.
Well, as long as he can. As long as he can keep up with his feet.
Yeah, exactly.
He kind of outran himself last week, so
he needs to buy them Cam Newton cleats that like go up to your shin. Yeah, so that's pretty much the game in a nutshell. Giants have a fantastic run defense, not as good as Tampa's. Only 8 spots worse though. They're very susceptible to the pass. Obviously, Tampa loves passing. So if you're Mike Evans owner, Scotty Miller owner, Gronk owner, definitely dial those guys up. Ronald Jones, if if you have to. But like I said, your rosters are probably already set in stone for this game anyway, since it is a Monday night game. So
yeah, just to play off what you said about Tampa really liking to pass. They pass 60.61% of the time, and they run 39.39% of the time. So that the numbers speak for themselves in that, and then it's to play off what you said about being a top 5 tight end.
yeah,
He's always been a monster in the red zone, and when Tampa Bay gets in the red zone, they're scoring almost 80% of the time of every possession they get in the red zone. They're scoring 80% of the time. So, Gronk is definitely always in my opinion, the number one target for Brady in the red zone. It's starting to heat up even more now. So.
Awesome. All right, so that is the rundown. I wanted to get that out of the way so you guys had something to go with for the game tonight, even though there's probably not much of a change that's going to happen to your roster. Just to do our due diligence, though, because you never know. Everyone's in a different situation. Everyone's in different leagues, different things.
I do have just a few facts about the matchup in general.
Okay.
All time, Giants lead the regular season series 15-7.
Yeah, but that's under Eli.
Yeah, the last 3 games were decided by a total of 6 points. Daniel Jones' first career start and win was against the Bucs last year, where they won 32-31. Jones threw for 336 yards, 2 touchdowns, and ran for 2 touchdowns, including the game touchdown with 1:16. But I don't think it's going to happen tonight. It's a totally different.
Oh, how the mighty have fallen.
Yeah. The only postseason matchup that the Giants ended up winning against the Buccaneers was the year that they went on to upset Tom Brady and the Patriots in the Super Bowl, which now is called the helmet catch game, where David Tyree caught the ball on his helmet. That was the only time they met in the postseason. And this is pretty cool. Just as the NFL as a whole, entering Week 8 as the league, there's been 5,329 points scored, which is the most in NFL history for 7 weeks. So just to tell you how the game changed and became an offensive game, there you have it right there. 50.8 total points per game is the highest through 7 weeks since 1970. 7 teams are averaging 30 points per game. That's the most since 1970. So, yeah. And the Giants, tonight they're going to wear a classic uniform, a special classic uniform to celebrate the 30th anniversary of the 1990 championship team, which I think is almost the same as their color rushes they wore a couple years ago. It's the white jersey, white pants with blue and red stripes, and the helmet will have the classic Giants logo now instead of the NY, and they will have the white face mask. So, just some tidbits.
Nice. So that's pretty cool info. What's even cooler is Tom Brady's playing the Giants. So and
the Giants have been a thorn in Tom Brady's side for years.
So. Yeah. So like Michael Jordan, Tom Brady never forgets, and he always gets his revenge. So
he's chomping at the bit of this one.
Right. And this defensive matchup, their Giants secondary against Tom Brady and their crazy offense that they have for the Bucs. Even if it was reversed and the Giants had the top 9 pass defense in the NFL, I think Tom is still going to have that chip and want to just throw the crap out of the ball and just expose the Giants. So yeah, I definitely see this being a Tom Brady game for sure.
I know a lot of people after that first Saints game, or the first couple games of the year, the Buccaneers, a lot of people are already, writing Brady off. Oh, he messed up. He should have stayed, and blah blah blah. Well,
we'll see how that works.
He's turned it on, and we see 18 touchdowns to 4 interceptions is pretty good.
Yeah, and then 5 in one game.
If he fell off anywhere, I've yet to find it.
Yeah, I mean, he did struggle, but obviously it's a new coach, a new offense, a new philosophy, new players, new timing.
Really no offseason, so.
Yeah, but I think he made his statement and put his foot in the ground when he came back and threw those 5 touchdowns to win the game earlier this year. Like that was the turning point in Tom Brady's season.
And for this learning period and trying to build chemistry,
yeah,
they've managed to be the division leader at 5-2. So
yeah,
if that's true, I hate to see when they really get to get to go.
And apparently AB is living with Tom Brady now like he did in New England. So they're literally in the same house every day. So AB, regardless, like forget about Chris Godwin, forget about Mike Evans. They're still going to play, obviously. They're still going to get their catches. Probably Mike Evans more than Chris Godwin. If anybody gets relegated behind AB, it's going to be Godwin over Evans. But the fact that AB is living with Tom Brady and seeing, I don't know if you ever watched the Tom versus Time documentaries, but it shows how he prepares every day from the morning he wakes up, from what he eats to his training physically to his hours and hours and hours of film study at home, at the facility, at practice. And he is so obsessed with football to the point where he just winning 6 Super Bowls and being considered one of the greatest, if not the greatest of all time, that has no bearing on how he prepares. And for AB, that had little discipline until he's met Tom, I think that's going to be fantastic for his career, and we are going to see AB blow up. But unfortunately, that's going to be at the cost of somebody. And I think it'll be Scotty Miller's going to be forgotten about. So I would just forget about him. Chris Godwin is definitely going to take the back seat, in my opinion. So.
Yeah, just to play off what you said about how he prepares and his work ethic and the film study. The only other person I can think of that did quite that way was Peyton Manning. And everybody, of course, it was a rivalry, the Patriots and the Colts all those years, but everybody wanted to be a Manning versus Brady thing. Like I said, it was a rivalry. I mean, it was, but like off the field, those guys are like they're close. Like they help each other off the field, and I think that's what made that rivalry so great. It just because of their friendship off the field and pushing each other to be better. It just made the NFL better as a whole, I believe.
Yeah, that just mutual respect. I mean, I will concede and say Tom Brady. I mean, if you don't agree that he's the greatest of all time, you got to admit that he makes a very good argument for it. So I personally think Tom Brady is the greatest of all time, just from what he's done. Yeah. Granted, he's not the best pure passer as far as stats is concerned, because obviously Drew Brees is taking that to a whole nother level.
Speaking of stats, Drew Brees rebroke the touchdown passing record last night for all-time career. So let's see if Brady can rebroke it tonight.
They're going to be neck and neck. But in my opinion, Drew Brees is the best passer, I guess, just overall pure passer. Despite him being short, despite his shoulder problems, he's the best pure passer. So my greatest QB is a 3-headed monster. Tom Brady is the most successful quarterback, the most well prepared, one of the most well prepared, and just an overall leader of a team. then you have Drew Brees, who is just obviously the best pure quarterback, the best pure passer just from his stats. And we've seen that being in a Sean Payton offense. He was doing things similar to that for the Chargers before they let him go. They didn't trust in him. And then my favorite QB, who I think is the most cerebral, who could, granted, Tom can do the same thing from what I understand. He can go out there, call his own plays for an entire drive. But there were times literally in Indy and stuff like that where Peyton Manning was the offensive coordinator on the field. Aaron Rodgers jokes about how he changes plays. Peyton would just turn off his earpiece and just lead the team. Peyton was the most cerebral quarterback I've ever seen in my life. And my personal favorite.
Tom Moore had the easiest offense coordinator job in football for 13, 14 years.
Yeah. I mean, it's just and their special teams, their punter and kicker, like they had the most cake job. Yeah, Pat McAfee didn't really have to do much, and now he's wrestling. But that's for our wrestling show. We already mentioned Pat McAfee. He cut a really, really great promo at Halloween Havoc. It's fantastic. If you haven't seen it, watch it. But enough about wrestling. We're talking about fantasy. That's for a different show. So that's our breakdown for the game. A little bit of a background into the series. Do you got any other random information about the NFL before I move on to the most recent injury reports and possible returns for the next couple of weeks?
None that I can think of other than I can't wait for next Sunday night when Drew Brees and Tom Brady face off Buccaneers and Saints on
round
Sunday.
Round two.
I think this one needs a little more because it's going to be for the division lead. So.
Yeah, and I'm hoping Michael Thomas, since he's on my team, hopefully he's back. We will talk about Michael Thomas here in a second as well. So like I said, I'm going to go over the injury report, not just some key players that got hurt this weekend, but also some key players that could be coming back in the next week or two, depending on because some of these people that I'm going to mention have a bye week next week. So not that they won't come back next week because they're not fully healthy, but just because they're waiting for their bye week. So they're getting an extra week of rest, and they'll be there week 10. So, but we'll go over it. So we'll start with the Browns. So Nick Chubb and Austin Hooper are possibly going to be having their first weeks back on week 10 because they do have that week 9 bye week that I just mentioned. Chubb, as we know, had that MCL sprain. Hooper had his appendix taken out. Chubb has missed the IR time. He's missed his mandatory plus then some to get his MCL right. He hasn't officially been cleared off of IR, but I would assume that he gets designated ready to go and start really going in practice next week if not this week, then next week during their official bye week or whatever. So look for those. I know right now Chubb is still listed on IR, but he's probably stashed in everyone's team. I don't see anybody releasing him back into the waivers. He's too good. If somebody has and is dumb enough to do that, snatch him up because a lot of rosters on any format, whether it be ESPN, Yahoo, whatever, a lot of roster lineups have built-in injured reserve players that only become available once you click on the player that has an IR by their name. You click on them as if you were going to move them to the bench, and then you'll magically see IR spots show up. You just roll them down in there, so you got extra bench spaces. But when that person's back and you got to bring them back to the bench from the IR, you're going to have to release somebody later. But anyway, so if that's somehow happened, definitely get Nick Chubb, stash him somewhere. Austin Hooper, like I said, he's recovering nicely. He's getting this week 9 bye week, and he should be back on week 10. I know if you have George Kittle or something like that, or Zach Ertz, and someone probably already has Dallas Goedert, Austin Hooper is definitely a viable option. I had a lot of hope for David Njoku, but obviously for some reason him and Baker do not have the same connection as they did last year, and Hooper shows more of a connection with Baker. So he's also a stash right now while he still has that big O beside his name, because a lot of people see that O, they don't read too much into it, and they just pass on it. So again, like we always preach, it's about context. So if you see that O, don't be scared. Do a little research into it and just kind of make your own decisions depending on what your situation is. Personally, if I had Zach Ertz or George Kittle or somebody like that, and I had to search for tight ends all year, like I ended up with Eric Ebron, and I wanted to upgrade, Hooper might be one of those people that I would switch out for Eric Ebron, because Ebron does have some good double-digit games, but there's been too many times he's had single-digit games, like really low ones.
Yeah, I always say, like, even if you're not on here, of course, we love when you come here and let us tell you all the matchups, but watch your matchups, because both of us yesterday won off playing the matchups, because we're both pretty injury riddled, and we just had to go off what we had and study, look at our free agency and go off matchups, and it ended up working out for both of us this week. So
yeah, it did. I actually had 0 people in my flex. My kicker got 3 points. DJ Moore got me 8 points. So basically what carried me was Russell Wilson, Julio Jones, and the Philadelphia defense got me 28 points because I played the matchup on that. And Boston Scott. Yeah, and you got DK. So yeah, definitely play those matchups and don't count yourself out, because I'd originally had 2 people out of my roster because either my players are on injured reserve, out for a week, or on bye weeks. So I had 2 spots open, but thankfully I was able to grab Boston Scott last minute, throw him in. He didn't get but like 8 points, but still he contributed. And I didn't get a goose egg in 2 positions. I got it in 1, but thankfully the rest of my team stepped up because I was able to play those matchups. I would have liked a couple of different players, but somebody beat me to them. So I guess they watch our podcast. So that's for the Browns. As far as the Eagles are concerned, speaking of the Eagles defense and Boston Scott and all that stuff, we're not going to talk about the Eagles defense. Obviously, they're still, tops in the league in sacks, and they're just a really good, solid defense. They treated me great all year. And one of my other leagues that I've kept them all year. And then here recently, I picked them up in my other league because someone dropped them. But Miles Sanders and Dallas Goedert, 2 big names for the Eagles. They are possibly making their return, from what I'm reading, week 10 after the bye week. So they've held Dallas Goedert and Miles Sanders out last week. They could have probably suited up last week, but just to be on the safe side, since, as Drew keeps calling it, the NFC least is struggling so bad. Doug Peterson is a very smart coach. He realizes that he doesn't have to put a lot of strain on his roster to stay ahead in that division. So they held Miles Sanders and Dallas Goedert out in an additional week, which is why I picked up Boston Scott last minute. But after their bye week on week 9, they should both be making their return. Goddard's listed as healthy. Sanders is listed as ready to go. Also, a name that you haven't heard of in a while. Nothing is set in stone yet, but it's going the right track. I wouldn't think this would be as soon as a week 10 return like Dallas Goedert and Miles Sanders. But an update on a name that we have not heard from the Eagles in a really long time is Alshon Jeffrey. Those of y'all that didn't know, in 2019, he had Jones surgery on his right foot for a fracture. Jones surgery, I have no idea what it is, but anything to deal with your feet, if you're a wide receiver, with the amount of pressure you're putting down on those cuts, surgery is a big deal on your feet. And if it's got a name after a person for a fracture, it's probably a pretty bad one, in my opinion. As somebody that is currently going through a foot fracture myself, so but mine doesn't have a name. It's just fracture. So like I said, he still doesn't have a timetable for return, but he has officially, from what I've read on different Philly sources and things like that, up from about 4 days ago, he's officially completed his recovery from the surgery to fix the Jones fracture in his right foot. But now he was cleared to practice a little bit lightly. Because of that, and because he's been out for so long, he did have a mild calf injury come up, so he's recovering from that right now. He may be returning the same time. It depends on how serious the calf injury is. I could not find how big it was. It's probably just soreness and a little bit of tightness and just not stretched out good enough, because he's literally just been on the shelf since, he's been recovering from this fracture. So it probably won't. And I'm more conservative, so I'm thinking maybe not week 10, but maybe like week 12 or something like that. I could totally see that in the realm of possibilities. And I know in a lot of fantasy leagues, playoffs start anywhere from week 12 to week 14 with us. So he should be gearing up just in time for the playoffs. So about week 11 or 12 or so, I would probably try to stash him. Keep him on your bench, because obviously it's going to take a couple of games for him to get warmed up. But he could be, if you make it all the way to the Super Bowl and you have him stashed on your bench, give him a couple of games to get warmed up and be familiar with Carson Wentz, who desperately needs people to throw to. He's going to get his targets. So you could have a one-time starter, like he only starts for you one game, but it ends up winning you the championship. So just something to keep in mind. So for the Packers,
while you were reading that, I looked up Jones fracture because I wasn't sure what it was either.
Yeah,
it's a break between the base and middle part of the fifth metatarsal on the foot. So it's like basically the middle of your foot is broken.
Yeah.
So
that's terrible.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure that hurts really bad.
To run on it. So.
Yeah, exactly, and cut, and you slam your feet down hard when you cut. So for the Packers, as we all know, Aaron Jones was injured, but he is possibly set to return for Week 9. If it depends on how you want to look at this. Me, I'm more conservative, but sometimes I do like to take risks. So I wouldn't blame you either way. One way to handle this is, if you have Williams, he could be good trade bait right now. Since it's a possibility to return for Week 9 and nothing set in stone, the people that have Aaron Jones, they probably have that doubt. Since Aaron Jones is a big staple of a lot of people's teams when they have him, they're a little worried, they're a little nervous, because they see the effect that he had on their team, and now in a negative way, they see how much they miss him now that he's gone, and how Jamal Williams can fill in for Aaron Jones, sometimes seamlessly. So what you could do is offer a trade, try to offload Jamal Williams while you still have a chance, and maybe even offer it to an Aaron Jones person as a handcuff. So next time Aaron Jones gets hurt, you could play it like that. Next time Aaron Jones gets hurt, here you go. And then you'll have Jamal Williams as a nice backup. Or you can keep him just in case Aaron Jones does not come back for Week 9. But just know, the longer you keep him, the shorter, like his shelf life is coming. Like it's running out. He's going to be on the bench again. Well, not on the bench, but he's going to be relegated to backup again at some point.
Not to just totally dismantle everything you just said, but it literally just popped up on my phone that Williams is now questionable with a calf injury. It literally popped up as you were speaking, and also popped up is their third string. I believe it's AJ Dillon is out for the next game due to COVID. So
okay, so yeah, breaking news for sure. Talk about breaking news. Because of that situation, then, if there is any inkling that Aaron Jones is ready to go, they're probably going to dial him up soon. Also, on the flip side, they need a backup running back, so I expect Jamal Williams to start as well, or not start, but play as well, unless the calf injury is super serious. Just because they need at least one of those guys. Ideally, they'd like to have both, but still, those options are still available. But now that breaking news that just came in, it seems a little bit less likely. Like Williams, his stock has kind of dropped a little bit just because of that information.
Yeah.
But it really just depends on the closer you get to this weekend. Keep an eye on Aaron Jones and Jamal Williams. And we'll give you an update, this weekend before the games and stuff like that, as well. So look to either, if you're a Jamal Williams person, look to either try to trade him as soon as possible, while you still have the most stock, because as soon as Jones comes back, like I said, Williams' stock's only going to drop as long as Aaron Jones keeps playing. So
yeah, I'll have that update Thursday. They actually are the Thursday night game against the 49ers. So
okay.
I'll have that one pregame.
All right, cool. And just to throw that out there, just for people that may not know, I've kind of failed you guys since we've started. But I was talking to some of the people in my league that have had problems with, oh my gosh, it's Sunday night or it's Monday and I have I have limited options because I started someone on Thursday. One thing to keep in mind for these Thursday games, if you have people that may or may not be starting, unless they're 100% healthy and they're going to play, you can start them without any worries. But if there's doubtfulness, if there's game time decisionness, or whatever, but they're do what?
I said if there's like questionable or anything, normally I don't even touch them.
Yeah, you could do that, but if you're desperate like me, who my whole bench is either injuries or bye weeks, another way to approach it is put them in your flex. Just keep them in your flex. That way you're not stuck. Like if it's a running back and you put him in your RB1 or RB2 spot, you're not stuck. And just because you only have one running back choice, or same thing with a wide receiver. Put that person in the flex, whether it be a running back or a wide receiver. That way you still have two running back spots open and two wide receiver spots open. So if the flex doesn't turn out the way it should be on a Thursday night, you still have four open spots, versus if you tie up, depending on how your bench is, if you tie up one of those specific spots for those specific skill positions, your flex might not always be as flexible as you would think it would be. And people sometimes get caught with that. So just keep that in mind going forward for the season. If there's any questionability, if you're not sure about somebody, regardless if it's injury or you're just doubtful that they'll perform, put them in your flex so you're not tying up a specific skill position. And that's just my opinion. It's something that's worked for me in the past. It's one of the rules that I go by. But again, it's just it's all about context and how aggressive that you want to feel or you want to play. So picking back up for the Falcons, Calvin Ridley, he did get a little bit banged up this weekend. He is uncertain for Week 9. So just in case, if you do have Calvin Ridley and you have space on your bench, or you have somebody that you're probably not going to play unless it's extreme circumstances, and you're not really afraid of someone else picking them up if you drop them, I would definitely scoop up Russell Gage if you can. He's been underperforming the past few weeks overall. So I'm sure a lot of people have dropped him because he is the third option on the Falcons. So he's not important to a lot of people unless you have a deep league. So Russell Gage, it's a very good possibility that he could be out there. So if you do own Calvin Ridley, that is definitely just keep Calvin Ridley, obviously, on your bench. But find somebody that you can part ways with and not have any qualms about it. Pick up Russell Gage just in case Calvin Ridley can't go. Then you got Russell Gage, who becomes the number 2. And we've seen in the past when Calvin Ridley's out or not doing so well in a game, Russell Gage can be a very viable option. And Matt Ryan loves going to him on third down. So those targets are definitely there for Russell, for sure. Kenny Golladay, so onto the Lions. Kenny Golladay is ruled out already for Week 9. So if there's a way that you can go after Marvin Jones Jr., I know he's underperformed as far as being compared to Kenny Golladay. Granted, Marvin Jones is still a decent receiver, but he's definitely taken a step back, in my opinion, from last year. It was more of a 1-2 punch last year. Now it's more Kenny Galladay's show, and then they'll default to Marvin Jones if Galladay's not open. But in this situation, Marvin Jones is now, if Kenny Golladay cannot go for Week 9, Marvin Jones is the starting wide receiver for that team. So if there's a way that you can go after Marvin Jones, even if you don't have Golladay, especially if you do, but if you don't and you just need a receiver in general because of all these injuries and bye weeks taking place, like if you have Michael Thomas or whatever, I would try to get Marvin Jones. Because he is going to be the main beneficiary to Golladay being out. Also, because of that, Adrian Peterson, I can see him getting relied on as well. Now, granted, I wouldn't start Adrian Peterson over a lot of people in the NFL, but you have to admit the dude looks good when he gets the ball still, and they still keep him a valuable part of that offense. I would say Swift as well, but a lot of people have already they have this fad with Swift already, so he might not be available. So that's the update for the Lions. As we talked about we talked a little bit about Tampa, but just to kind of nail down the Chris Godwin situation so you know how to approach it going forward. He is right now officially 50-50 to return for Week 9. He was dealing with, I believe, a hamstring injury, but he also had a fractured finger in his left hand when he caught a touchdown the last game that he played. On top of that, AB is possibly making his debut in Week 9 as well. So Godwin is 50-50 to return. AB is making his debut. So either that could push Godwin's comeback a little bit later, because if they feel comfortable with AB going forward in practice that week, if Godwin is 50-50, they might sit him out a week to give AB a chance to truly shine opposite Mike Williams, and also give Godwin an extra week to rest. So if you're a Godwin owner, I wouldn't like pull the fire alarm, but it would be interesting if you can get a good trade for Godwin and get out in front of this. But also know there is a possibility that you could get burned. The AB situation doesn't work out as well as you think it would. And Godwin is still very much heavily involved in that offense. But I just don't see how it's possible. Someone's got to suffer because Gronk gets his targets, even though he doesn't get his receptions. He's kind of slipping on the receptions part, even though he's getting his targets. Mike Evans is obviously the number one for Tom Brady. He loves Scotty Miller. He loved Godwin. He threw to Godwin when he was playing. But as we know, AB and Tom Brady are like two peas in a pod. AB moved in with Brady, and Brady wouldn't have allowed that to happen if he didn't plan on throwing to AB a whole lot for the rest of the year. Personally, if I had Godwin as soon as he's healthy, I would try to offload him, or at least wait and see if he has a good game. And when he does, because in the beginning, if him and AB both come back week 9, and they're both going to be playing, obviously Godwin is going to have the majority of the snaps over AB because he knows the offense a lot better. And he's got more chemistry with Tom Brady so far in that offense with that timing. I know AB played with Tom in New England, but offense is not just about a quarterback wide receiver timing. It's about the wide receiver timing with the routes and the quarterback knowing that time counting in their head as they're taking the snap and reading the defense. So if they're both playing the same week on week 9, I would maybe hold on to Godwin for a little bit for at least that week. Hopefully he has a good game, and then you'll be able to offload him for a higher value than if you wait until AB gets more comfortable in that offense, and then you'll start to see Godwin's targets decline because of that. That's just how I see it going for the remainder of the season, just because, again, like we keep saying, context, not just on the field, but off the field as well. Tom would not move AB into his house if he was not planning on making him a big part of that offense. So that's how I feel about Chris Godwin, and Scotty Miller as well. He's pretty much done for. Of course, he's going to have his Wes Welker type games, his Cole Beasley type games every once in a while, Adam Humphrey type games. But overall, I think the Scotty Miller fad is pretty much done when AB gets comfortable and Chris Godwin gets fully healthy. So yeah, if you can make something happen with Godwin, I would definitely recommend it. At the very latest, wait to see how he does for week 9. If it turns out before week 9, he's definitely ruled out. Try to offload him. You'll probably have to take a reduced rate for him. But even a reduced rate for Godwin, if you're trading somebody who has decent knowledge about fantasy football, they know Godwin's going to come back. And maybe you could sway them as far as saying, hey, I know he's out this week, but he is scheduled to make a return. He knows the offense better than AB. He's got more chemistry in the timing of that offense with Tom Brady. So he's still a viable option, but you still might have to take a little bit of a hit. What we're hoping for, if you hold on to him through week 9, is that he has, an 80-yard game with, 80 yards with 5 receptions, or 6 receptions for 80 yards, something like that, like a really respectable like 14-point game, 15-point game, anywhere from 12 to 15 points. So you can be like, look, Godwin's coming back. Godwin's back. Like, it's his first week back. He's going to keep getting better. And then that'd be good trade bait for you, because we're always looking to make our rosters better. You start from the bench and you work your way up. I never trade my starters unless I absolutely have to. I always try to piece together good trades from my bench to improve my bench, so that once I improve my bench, I can easily improve my starting roster. Sometimes, you can split people up into two different people, spread those points out over a couple of different people. That way, overall, you get more point totals to your team. Even though you're losing specific points in one position, you could be gaining more points in a different position. So always build your bench and make it as strong as possible. That way you have the problem of, oh, shoot, who do I start? Michael Thomas, Julio Jones, or DeAndre Hopkins? That's the predicament I'm in every week. If Michael Thomas would ever get healthy. But that's the type of situations that you want to be in, because when you have starting players that are just really good caliber players on your bench that you're probably not going to use because your starting lineup is so good because of all the moves you've made, that whole bench that you have, and you can take advantage of that. You can mix and match depending on your needs week to week. And most importantly, if you want to look at it from a defensive perspective, yes, there is a defensive perspective in fantasy, not by picking a defense to play, but as far as a defensive strategy against the other players in your league. It is frustrating, but it is completely ethical and legal, in my opinion. Sometimes you can stash players so that people cannot get those players. You can stash handcuffs. So if Aaron Jones goes down and you have Jamal Williams, and even though you don't play them, that guy can't get Jamal Williams. Same thing with Kareem Hunt. All those things. It's always good to think about it, not just from how many points you can score week to week, but how many points you can prevent everyone else from getting based off their needs. Because when people cannot replace their players, they get desperate. When they get desperate, they make trades. And when they make trades, that you usually get the better end of them because they are desperate for them. Sorry for that. I know that's long-winded, just passing on a little bit of advice. So just in case you didn't hear, I don't know how you wouldn't because it's pretty big news, but unfortunately, Jimmy G and George Kittle both got hurt. It's lower body injuries for both of them, one with a knee, one with an ankle injury. They're both, I think Jimmy G is slated for being out 6 weeks, George Kittle 8 weeks. So about 6 to 8 weeks for both of them, which is not good for us because we are going into week 9 of the season and playoffs. The championships usually in leagues are week 17. So by the time they come back, it'll be in the midst of playoffs for a lot of your fantasy teams. So usually I don't like picking up players, no matter how good they are, unless they should have been cleared like a week or two ago, but they've kept them out just to get them up and going with practice and get them warmed up and stuff, so they're not having to learn on the fly or get used to that game speed and stuff on the fly when they first come back. Unless that happens, if they're literally just coming out cold from 1 week to the next week starting in a game, I usually don't like that. But again, trade bait. You could pick one of them up, and but depending on if you have a trade deadline. Our league does. It's the middle of November. So anyway, but speaking of, Drew, we're about to be done with trades in our league, so we need to start making moves. I personally love the trade. I trade every year, and I piss everybody off with it. But yeah, I'm a trade fiend. But anyways, so depending on how you view San Francisco's roster or team in general, obviously Jimmy G, if he's not playing, they got Nick Mullins. Nick Mullins at times has shown that he can be a fantastic quarterback. He's also shown at times that he can be a terrible quarterback. So if you have faith in Nick Mullins, then keep the receivers for San Francisco. Definitely keep the running backs for San Francisco regardless, because they're a great running team. And now that they don't have George Kittle or a starting quarterback, they're going to want to protect Nick Mullins, not physically, but like emotionally from throwing picks and stuff, or just having more bad games like he did in this season. So those running back values for that team go up even more because, as we know, it's more of a committee type offense, and they're going to need that committee more and more because they're going to be running more and more. So they're going to be swapping players out. So just because someone has one San Francisco running back doesn't mean you shouldn't grab another one. But as far as the other skill positions are concerned, if you trust Nick Mullins more often than not, I would keep Ayuk. I would keep all the other ones that are out there that you may have, just for at least a couple of weeks to see how they do with Nick Mullins. Because like I said, last year he was lights out, and some games this year he was lights out as well. So, also Jordan Reid is slated to come back from injured reserve sometime soon. There was not a date that I could find yet, but I did get a lot of reports from a lot of places that soon, quote unquote, he's coming off of IR soon. The thing is with Jordan Reid, number one, he's a very talented tight end. We've seen him perform for the 49ers this year already. Obviously, he had his run in Washington, and he is good when he's healthy. He still shows that he's good when he's healthy for the 49ers, but the dude is just injury prone like crazy. So if you're really desperate for someone and you have George Kittle, preferably, on the safer side, maybe go with Ingram, Austin Hooper, someone like that. Tanyan, if he's still available, because he's like add and drop week to week, depending on how he does. Now people are adding him because of last week, but the week before people were dropping him because he had a low week. So people like that would probably be more of a safer side. But if you want to get George Kittle type numbers, Jordan Reed's probably your best bet on any given Sunday or Thursday or Monday. It just depends on if he's healthy and how he's feeling. So Jordan Reed is an option there too for your George Kittle owners. So two more things real quick. Gardner Minshew is still out. He's going to be out for week 9. So prepare accordingly for that. Robinson, their running back, definitely dial him up because they're going to need to rely heavily on him. He's a very decent running back. I don't know so much about the wide receivers. Well, I say wide receivers, but Chark, however you say his name. He's really the only viable one, but he's viable in my opinion because of Minshew. Nick, when Nick Foles was in there briefly for the Jags, they couldn't really get anything going with Chark. But as soon as Minshew stepped on the field, they had instant chemistry. So, definitely would rule out any of the Jags receivers, but I would definitely dial up Robinson, their running back. So, and last but not least, the New Orleans Saints got some good news. Michael Thomas and Emmanuel Sanders, there's a good possibility. Well, I'm not going to say good because I don't want you guys to hold me to that and get mad at me if they don't. But there is several reports that they could return for week 9 against Tampa Bay, as Drew said. So that's a really important game. A lot is hinging on it. So because they're saying that they could return for week 9, that makes me really optimistic that they will return from week 9. Emmanuel Sanders has had 2 weeks off because of his COVID protocol. Apparently he is coming along very nicely in his recovery. He's doing well. Michael Thomas has been battling with ankle and hamstring injuries since the beginning of the year. And then he had that punch on that player that had him out another week as well. But he's had several weeks to recover from that. He has been cleared to practice, and he has practiced some, Michael Thomas that being, and he's looked pretty decent as far as that's concerned. So definitely it would be wise if Emmanuel Sanders has been dropped in your league because of COVID, because he's been out for a couple of weeks, and usually people get frustrated with players of that caliber that are not starters, but they're not, scrubs. They're kind of in the middle, and their weeks vary depending on game script. Usually people don't mess around that much with them. If it's multiple weeks, they just drop them and move on to somebody else. So you can snatch up Emmanuel Sanders if he's available, because it's a better chance that he's going to return for week 9 than Michael Thomas. I'll just put it that way, because he didn't have an injury. He just had a sickness, and apparently he's getting over it very well. So, But yeah, definitely keep your fingers crossed for Michael Thomas. Like I said, I have him, so I'm keeping my fingers crossed and remaining optimistic. But definitely have a backup plan just in case, and that backup plan could be Emmanuel Sanders for sure. Um, and one more thing, I know I said that was the last thing, but one more thing. I want to talk about. Oh, excuse me, I just lost my hat. I want to talk about handcuffs. Um, that's something that we should have addressed a few weeks ago when this running back plague and plight has been hitting us. I knew it was going to be something. It's all every year. Running back is one of the most hardest hit positions, not as far as volume, but as far as volume compared to the availability of viable running backs. Obviously, as we know, there's a lot more top tier wide receivers than there are top tier running backs. So by sheer ratio, running backs usually are hit the hardest every year with injuries and bye weeks. And if you do not draft well, as our league learned, if you do not, if you do not draft as many running backs quickly as possible, you will be hurting later on in the season when all those injuries and bye weeks take place. So I want to stress handcuffing. And what for those of you that don't know, not insulting y'all's intelligence, but I'm speaking. The show is for newbies. It's for veterans. It's for whoever wants to listen. I'm no expert, but I do definitely. I'm not a huge fan in handcuff because a lot of the time it just wastes space on a bench for me when I could have a starting running back on a different team instead of a backup on the same team as my starter. But there are very good handcuffs as an example. Joe Mixon, he is hurt, unfortunately, way too often for the starting position that he has and for what he's usually drafted at. He's already missed twice this year. So a handcuff that has been shown to be proven a very good pickup year in and year out, as long as they've had Joe Mixon and his injury problems, is Giovanni Bernard, obviously. And Gio gets numbers because he's more heavily involved in the passing game. So if you have Joe Mixon, he is supposed to be coming back next week. It's supposed to be a one-time out injury. They say it's week to week, but all reports say he should be playing next week. If not, go ahead and be proactive and get Gio if you have a spot for him. Because if Mixon cannot go, if his foot's still injured enough to not play, Gio is definitely a viable backup. As far as like what happened with Cleveland. It's too late now, but I mean, those of y'all that drafted Chubb, no one could have seen that happening. But usually with somebody of that caliber and that caliber of a backup, it would have been good to have Kareem Hunt as a handcuff for that. Packers, Aaron Jones, a good handcuff to pick up would be Jamal Williams. Again, that's probably too late now. But just for future reference, or if you do catch someone slipping on the waivers, things like that. Handcuffs in the wide receiver spots as well. Emmanuel Sanders for Michael Thomas, so on and so forth. Handcuffs are very, very important. Also, Mattinson for Dalvin Cook. Dalvin Cook is usually questionable every week with a hamstring injury or groin or something like that. But as I said on Sunday, and as he's shown his whole career, but as he's shown on Sunday, Dalvin Cook's usually always got a hamstring issue or something, just because when players are that fast and that agile and that athletic, their hamstrings and their groins are the most vulnerable because that's their start and stop. That's their cuts. That's their explosion. And these guys are so explosive. They use a lot of energy, a lot of muscle, a lot of torque to get that explosion. So they do have hamstring issues and stuff like that pretty regularly. like wide receivers, you'll see ankle and foot problems because that's what they use to do their cuts and their jumps, and they land on their feet hard and stuff like that. I don't know if you've ever seen a wide receiver do a cut, but if you get a chance to watch a game, look at them and see how hard they chop their feet before they make an in or out cut. They put extreme stress and pressure on their feet. So Mattinson is a very good backup to Dalvin Cook. He's shown that he can play the similar style. So that would also be a good, viable backup. Only if you have space for people like this. I'm not saying give up a starter on a different team just to get a handcuff for for Dalvin Cook or for whoever. Heck, if you have Ronald Jones and you get desperate, it might be great to get Leonard Fournette as your handcuff. So anyway, just to get an idea on some little tips and tricks. I know we've kind of strayed away from that since our draft day as far as tips and kind of what we do to be successful in our leagues. But that's just an added dimension and an added way to think about it. Number one, backups or handcuffs, I should say. Number two, as far as during the draft process, stacking up on running backs because they're hit the hardest usually. And then number three, which has slipped my mind. What was the other thing I said? Anyway, sorry. Oh, man. It's been a long day. But anyway, that is all the advice that we have for you today as far as, people to look out for during the week, people to as far as who could be coming back, who might be missing out. Also, speaking of, if Gio's a backup, if Gio's starting next week and Mixon is not playing, if you're, again, in a super deep league, Samaje Perine, I don't know if you remember that name, but he will be regulated to the backup against or behind Giovanni Bernard. So even if someone grabs Gio and it's a deep league, you can still grab Samaje Perine. I haven't seen him play this year, but back in the day, a few years ago, he was a pretty viable option as a backup resort. So anyway, so that's all I have for the game this week. So.
Quick score update. The Giants are winning 7-3 midway through the fourth. They just forced Tampa Bay to punt, so they're getting the ball back. So
midway through the fourth quarter?
Midway through the second quarter. Sorry.
I was like, damn, that game went fast.
I was about to say fourth down, but I said fourth quarter. And also,
they spotted the Giants 2 quarters, so they wouldn't get beat so bad.
Yeah. Also, which was, I never saw a report of it, but apparently it was just hours before game time. The Giants activated Alfred Morris off their practice squad, and he's actually leading carries and yards for the Giants right now. So, dude,
I could have told you that. I did not know. My fault, guys. I did not know that they were gonna. I knew they brought Alfred Morris onto their practice squad. I did not know that they activated him from practice squad.
Yeah, it was literally like hours before game time when they.
Okay, so that's why I missed it. But I need to get better at that. But apologize for that. Alfred Morris. I don't know if you remember him for the Washington football team now, but the Washington team. He can be a very, very dangerous running back under the right circumstances. So
he was a good backup in Dallas, filling in for Zeke.
Yeah, exactly. And he played with Adrian Peterson for a little while in Washington, so I'm sure he learned some stuff from that. He can do both. He can run, he can catch. He's a very dynamic, or at least he was a dynamic back. I'm sure he's maybe lost a little bit of a step being on the practice squad and stuff, but He's not like up there in age to where he can't get himself back into shape that he was in during those times where he was successful. So there you go with another option. If you're having bye week and injury blues with your running backs and everything, Alfred Morris is definitely something worth looking into for sure.
Yeah.
I wouldn't necessarily put too much, unless if he has a phenomenal game tonight, put as much stock in that as possible, because he had a phenomenal night against a phenomenal run defense.
Yeah,
but if he doesn't have a phenomenal night, don't read too much into it. You look at his usage instead of his yardage, if his yardage isn't great, and his yards per carry. So if his yardage, or if his usage is up, or if his yards per carry is up, things like that, that tells you more of the context than just how many rushing yards he got.
Yeah, like you said, you need to look at his carries, his yards per attempt. Yeah. And also, if you're PPR, watch his use in the receiving out of the backfield.
Yeah.
Because every catch he gets, that's a point. So.
Yeah, and they're hurting for pass catchers, but thankfully they're getting some people back. Ingram's posted some 10-point games the past few weeks, and at least in our league. However you score your league might be different, but in our league he's posted double-digit games the past few weeks. Sterling Shepard had a really great comeback. Has been pretty solid. Now we're just waiting for someone else to take over, whether it be Slated, Alfred Morris, whatever, to pick up that spot and elevate it. I'm
looking at the stat line now, and Evan Ingram actually has 1 carry for 10 yards.
That's good. Yeah, it shows that they're getting more dynamic. So.
And he's got one target for 9 yards. So.
So that's almost 3 points right there, 2.9.
Yeah. So they're trying to. I would guess Jason Garrett's trying to pull out all the
stops against Tom Brady.
Yeah.
We'll see. But yeah, that's all I got right now.
Yeah.
You got anything else, Drew?
I believe that's it.
All right, cool, guys. Like I said, I will see you guys next week, possibly by the Thursday night game for next week. If not sooner, anywhere from the Monday night game to the Thursday night game. I'll see you guys next week. Until then, you guys are going to be in very good hands, obviously, with Drew. I keep leaning to the wrong side because it's like a mirror. With Drew with fantasy football. To be 100% honest, don't tell anything, but I get all my information from him before the show. So really, I'm just regurgitating what he tells me all the time. So you're going to hear it through. Yeah, you're going to hear it all from his mouth for a couple of days. Trust in Drew with his, because we think exactly alike for sure. And as you know from his predictions by himself on this podcast, he is very knowledgeable, and he is right on. He has his thumb so far up Adam Schefter. He knows about it probably before Adam Schefter does. I'll tell Adam Schefter. No, I'm just kidding. Also, update. I know the Titans have a trash defense, but they just traded for Desmond King, so we got another cornerback.
I meant to mention that earlier.
So if you have the Titans defense, hold on a little bit more. We might tighten up a little bit.
Speaking of that game, as I was watching it,
we don't talk about it. We don't talk about it.
Well, I just want to say, I was seeing some of the Titans fans that I'm friends with on Facebook, and they were just done. Like, they were like, this team is trash. And I'm like, man, y'all are 5-2 now, but
yeah.
And I commented, I'm like, if you really got to think about it as not as a fan, you got to look at the whole picture as a whole, like the game as a whole. The Bengals, they're 1-5-1. Or 2-5-1 now, but going into the game, they're 1-5-1. 4 out of those 5 losses was 3 or 4 points every game. Like they're one possession games every single game, and they have a tie, and they should have won that one, but the kicker missed the field goal, the game-winning field goal. So like I mean, honestly, they're a few plays from being 7-1. Like they're like it's not that they're a horrible team. They've played great. They've been competitive all year. They average like 400 yards a game. Like they're not as bad as their record says, and it just like when I see people like that on Facebook and just dogging their own team out, and like it makes me think like how much do they really like study football, or are they just like hey, I'm a Titans fan, or hey, I'm a this fan.
Yeah, I know people are really down on Jonathan Joseph, but he actually did get recognition from the NFL a couple of weeks ago for being a really good cornerback 1 week. Anyway, I'm not defending Jonathan Joseph. We obviously needed a cornerback brought in. I think the most frustrating part about that game, at least for me, and I'm not saying I'm one of those experts on football or whatever, but the Titans are 8. We only have 8 sacks on the year. Joe Burrow was without 5 of his week 1 starting offensive linemen, did not have Joe Mixon, and still shredded us apart. And we missed so many sacks. Jadeveon Clowney missed sacks. Big Jeff Simmons couldn't get it done. And they just absolutely shredded us. We still are terrible on third down. So it's those things that frustrate me. But now that we got Desmond King, hopefully we can shore up that secondary. But at the same time, pass rush is extremely important, because if you let a quarterback sit back there for 5 to 7 seconds, it doesn't matter how good your defensive backfield is. It could be the Legion of Boom. It could be Ed Reed and Ray Lewis's secondary from the 2000 Baltimore Ravens. It could be whatever. If you leave your defensive backs and your linebackers in pass coverage for 5 to 7 seconds, like on a consistent basis, you're going to get picked apart, because it's hard for your players to stay with those receivers and tight ends, because you can't touch them outside of 5 yards. You got to just run with them. And sometimes that's hard to do. Dylan, he said, at least you don't have the Cowboys defense. That's true. We have just about as many sacks as the Cowboys defense, though. And I would venture to say that our third down defense is worse than the Cowboys as well. Probably because the Cowboys don't get the third down. They get scored on before then. But that's neither here nor there.
They usually don't make it past first.
Oh, man. Jerry needs to send Dak a contract immediately.
Why wait when you can just get it on first down?
Yeah. Anyway. So just if you have the Titans defense, hold on. Have a little faith, a little bit longer. We got Desmond King. He did win. He was first team All-Pro in 2018. He's only been in the league 4 years, so he's still young, which is what we need. We need a young. We're getting younger as the years go on. We're getting a younger running back with Derrick Henry. We should be drafting younger linemen than this next draft. Our secondary, we have Kevin Byard. We got Dory Jackson. Now we got Desmond King. Those guys are young. Harold Landry's young. Big Jeff Simmons. All those people. So we're trying to get talent, but we're trying to also have youth as well. I understand that we're wanting to push for a Super Bowl this year, but let's not just speaking to Titans fans in general. I know this is fantasy, but let's not abandon our future just because we've been craving a Super Bowl for so long that we want to go all out this year just to win one. I would rather not get a Super Bowl this year, still get to the playoffs, still show that we can hang, and then at the same time go for the multiple Super Bowls later on. I'm trying to build a dynasty. I'm not trying to win just one and done like the Eagles or something like that. Anyway, I'm sure I think you already showed that our first through fourth down is bad.
On offense and defense. So
yeah,
at least we're consistent.
There you go. At least you can bet on it.
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry to go off on that little personal Titans rant, but just for the people that do have some of the Titans players, Corey Davis did fantastic as well. So he's also a nice little pickup if he's out there. Anyway, so we'll let you guys go. I know it's a Monday night. You guys got work in the morning and stuff like that, but thank you for indulging us for a little bit longer. We got a wider range of things instead of just focusing straight on Monday night. We're trying a little bit different things, mixing things up, trying to bring a little bit more spice, a little spark to this instead of just reading off numbers every week. It started to feel kind of stale, and if it felt stale to us, I'm sure it felt stale to you guys too. So we're trying out a new formula here, so hopefully you guys like it. Again, as always, this is all of our shows are always interactive, so you guys comment, even if we're not on the air, post to our page or comment on a video or whatever you need to do, direct message us, whatever. Start sit questions, our opinions, even though, we're not like, I'm not claiming we're gurus or professionals or anything, but it always is nice to have a second opinion from somebody that thinks in fantasy knowledge terms. So this page is for you guys. I mean, granted, it's good for us because we get a creative outlet, but really we got into this to help people and to share our knowledge that we have, and to help people be the best that they can be, because fantasy is only fun as fun as the people you play with. And if you play a bunch of scrubs in your league, yeah, you might win, but eventually it's going to get boring. So it's always better when everyone's at their best. So again, this show's for you guys. So any chance you get, whether we're on the air or we're off the air, send us comments, try to get in touch with us in any way, and we will help you out the best that we can. And we're going to try to bring you the best updated content possible. And we're always going to try to evolve and get better to make the show as good as possible. So, so thank you guys for watching. Again, I will personally see you next week. Drew will see you on Thursday and Sunday for fantasy. And then Drew and Chad will see you Sunday for our wrestling show. And then, as I said last night with Chad, next Friday we are going to start a new segment for wrestling for Chad and I. And then I don't want to put too much pressure on Drew, but because he's doing a lot with this fantasy side. But we're going to start doing a just kind of a personal breakdown of documentaries about just the history of wrestling, about our background as far as where we come from, how we fell in love with wrestling, where we started, and the dark side of the ring. Season 4 is coming up, so we want to explore that. 30 days of Undertaker leading up to Survivor Series. We want to go over those documentaries. Just a lot of cool stuff. Just trying to see what sticks, add some extra content for you guys to be entertained, quite frankly. So yeah, so anyways, that's how it's going to play out for the next couple of weeks, and we will see you guys later. Good luck, and we'll see you on Thursday. So and as always, come with us if you want to win. Peace.